Hey everybody, it's Dave here and Darren from the Great White North, and we are two old bloggers. That's right, we're here to talk your Minnesota Vikings and some of the things that's happened since we've last been on, and it's been a while. Hey Darren, how are you doing?
Pretty good, Dave. Yourself?
I am doing fabulous. It is a Sunday. I've had time to do nothing but relax, look at some football stuff, look at strength of schedule, things getting ready for the season. We had OTAs this last weekend, or this weekend, if you want to call it that, and I've ate it up. It's good to see the rookies out there. What do you think?
Yeah, it is good to see the rookies. The only thing about the OTAs is everybody who's got any passing knowledge of football goes is that they're running around in shorts and like t-shirts, and you really can't judge, you really can't take much stock in anything that they're doing. But good that they're out there, and we know that the Vikings have signed 6 of the draft picks. At least was what I saw a half an hour ago,
Oh,
including
good.
Darrisaw. And Bynum, Twyman was signed, Davidson, um, Nwangu's been signed. So that's 6 of, they got 5 more to sign. It looks like a lot of the third and fourth rounders are the guys that they still haven't signed yet, which is so that, but they had a lot of those picks. So they're probably trying to figure out how they slot in and like, and what, like who gets that 50, that $1 more for
Right.
signing the rookie contract. But, you know, I love the fact that they got Darrisaw in there and signed up
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like the old days, Dave, where like 10 years ago or more
Right.
than that, where Bryant McKinney would holds out for half the year.
Hey
You
there,
never
Jerome.
knew if you're Viking Jerome in early as well as Mary. Mary was multitasking. She said she was watching SDSU in the championship game, and she's apparently listening to us two
To
old
us.
farts. So love that. But Mary's always here for us. So we are happy with that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
back in the
OTA,
old days when
OTA.
they had to negotiate and they would wait till like a week into the training camp before they decided something, that used to drive us crazy, especially when they were
Yeah,
negotiating the higher salaries and they hadn't taken a snap one.
no,
But
it was always kind of nerve wracking as a fan, because you're like, oh yeah, we drafted so and so, he's going to fill this need, but then you don't know if he's actually going to fill a need. You don't even know if he's going to
show up.
sign or play
Mm-hmm.
play the year. And missing training camp or even part of training camp for rookies pretty crucial when they haven't been through it before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mary, you are talented.
Speaking of the
And
rookies that haven't signed, I'm sure all of them did the same thing Kellen Mond did, where they signed a injury release deal where it's the Vikings cover any injuries while they continue to negotiate. And I'm sure
yeah,
uh, everybody will be signed probably within the week, and we won't have to worry about it. So it's a good thing.
it is a good thing. Good for the rookies because they actually get to work with the team and work with the coaches and not have to sit around and just do their own workouts, and you don't know what the oversight is there.
Mm-hmm.
And good for the Vikings and the NFL teams too, because they've got everybody in that they need to work with. Even more crucial now because of even though things are getting back to normal, at least in a little bit more in the normal, I understand, in the U.S. as far as
Mm-hmm.
everyday living, but there's still a lot of COVID protocols and processes that they have to go through, and not as much. They're still not meeting with the coaches as far, I mean, in person, as far as I understand.
No, they
Like
if they are
indoors.
vaccinated, they are.
Mm.
It's only if you're not vaccinated that I know they got to wear the masks still if they're not vaccinated. But if they are vaccinated, the masks come off and they can fully resume normal. It is a step forward. They
Yep.
expect that by July, I think it is, Minnesota is talking about 100% capacity in all the stadiums. So that will be good going into this season. Now, they also, I think, talked about um, who wears mask, who doesn't, and it all
Right.
depends on whether you're vaccinated or not. But here, down here in the lower 48, we are working towards getting back to quote normal, which is good. And with the rookies in the meeting rooms with the coaches. They're getting their hands on. We saw film of Kellen Mond this week working on his footwork. It looks a little different. That was one of his dings, so to say, about him coming out in the draft, was that's one of his areas he needed to work. So things are looking good. But let's talk about Kellen Mond.
Yes, let's talk about Kellen Mond. Probably the most anticipated third-round draft pick in recent history for the
Yes.
Vikings, and where he kind of fits into what the Vikings quarterback plans are now and into the future. And he was a guy that we'd heard that was targeted, a good fit for the Vikings. The Vikings were targeting him, and it ended up being all that pre-draft noise was actually proved to be true. The Vikings, there was even some talk that I think that Mond might go in the second round, which would have been pretty early for him. But when when you got 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, and so many teams still looking for quarterbacks, of course, that really upped the demand for whoever else was left out there. Like there might have been another year, maybe Mond would have went in the 4th or 5th round. This year,
right, or on a shallow year, he might have gone in the 2nd or possibly bottom of the 1st, depending on the depth of that particular year's draft class.
Yeah, that's right, and. For Mond, I think that you were talking about how's that going to impact the Vikings quarterback situation, and it's not going to impact it this year. I don't think any of us want to see Mond play this year. We feel that Cousins is going to be in there. He's going to be in there in 2022, and unless something crazy happens, like there's some weird trade or something goes on, but post 2022, that's where it'll get interesting. That next year, maybe even this year, there's already going to be the questions. Okay, like, are you signing Cousins to another extension? What are you doing with him? And that noise is going to get amped up more and more and more. And so really crucial for I think 2022, after 2 years, I think, of looking at Mond and him and practice and preseason, and maybe he'll get a little bit of action and maybe a game that doesn't mean anything. Hopefully
right. Hopefully we've locked up the number 1 seed and we can rest everybody in week 18 and he gets to play against the Chicago Bears. Yes.
It's not a situation like the Eagles had last year where they got Jalen Hurts in there and because they have to, or that sort of a thing. And then I think after 2 years of seeing Mond and in preseason, in practices, maybe a little bit of games, I think my feeling is that they should know if they've got somebody that's worthy of starting by then or not. And if it's a not, then you're going into 2022 either somehow looking to trade for a QB that's kind of a bridge guy, or you're looking to draft a QB that in the 2000, and then that draft coming up. And depending on where you're picking, you may be able to get your guy where you are, or you might have to trade up into the first round to get the guy that you want. We don't know where the Vikings are going to be at that situation, but that's what I think the next 2 years is going to be. Obviously, it's going to be Cousins. He's going to be in there. He's going to be doing the Kirk Cousins stuff.
He's our starter, especially in 2021. He's our starter. Yes.
He's been durable. He's a guy who doesn't miss games. Mond's going to be able to sit, and that's a good thing for him, and I think a good thing for the Vikings. But after 2022 season, that's when the big decision is going to be made. You re-sign Cousins, by then he'll be in his mid-30s, not a young guy. Is he a guy you want to re-sign and for the tail end of his 30s, and you kind of just tread water with where you are, or do you turn it over to Mond, or do you go a whole different direction?
I think it all depends on how well Kirk Cousins plays, because
for sure,
if Kirk Cousins comes out and balls out this season, and this is one of the interesting things I love about this pick, Kirk Cousins now knows he has somebody beyond Sean Mannion that could actually play and take his spot, just like he did with RG3. Now, the question is, how does that motivate him? Does it motivate him like when Green Bay drafted last year and Aaron Rodgers goes out and has an MVP season? Does he take that as motivation and says, screw it, I'm going to play the best I can, no holds bars, and goes out and has an MVP season? He is an underdog, but he is one of those that's already been talked as possibly having an MVP season. He would have to go out and do things that we don't consider necessarily Kirk Cousins type things, and that's think off script and actually execute. If the Vikings have a very successful season, and by definition, that's probably the NFC Championship at minimum, then the Vikings might come back to him and say, hey, we really need to do that extension. Can we do it to lower cap hits? He's already told them no for this year. If he does not play well, if he takes it in the opposite direction, starts out slow like he tends to do, then you'll be hearing screaming for Mond, but you'll also be hearing get rid of Cousins after this season. And then they'll try to trade him. They may eat the $10 million in dead money, right? But if another team takes Kirk Cousins, they save $30 million, and then that $30 million can go elsewhere to build up the team around Mond, because we have already got that guy in the house. It's a coin flip to me. I don't know which way it's going to go. Hopefully, Kirk Cousins has the best season of his career, because these last 2 years he statistically has, and he takes us to the big show. And then if we win the big show, hey, I'll design the statue. Put it that way. Then we can sign him and go from there. But until that point, or until the consistent NFC Championship, always talked as a perennial Super Bowl contender, I think the Vikings may move off of Kirk as early as next year, but no later than what you said, after 2022.
I don't really see Cousins taking a step back as far as his play. I think last year was kind of like the year before was a little bit maybe atypical Cousins, in that he was pretty consistent the whole year and didn't, the turnovers were down as far as interceptions go. They were down historically to what he's averaged. Last year, he got it up on more what he normally does, but they all came like in the first 5 games, and that pretty much screwed us. And I think that's Kirk Cousins for you, right? That's what you're going to get. You're going to get around high 3,000s, depending on how much we throw the ball. High completion percentage, a lot of TDs, not a whole lot of interceptions, but not like Aaron Rodgers 2 or 3 a year. But who does that anyway, right? Besides Rodgers. And so I don't really see how. I think unless he gets hurt, Mond is not going to play in these 2 years, and I'm okay with that. And we'll just have to see whether everybody else around Cousins makes up for his shortcomings in late game situations and pressure situations, so that we don't have as many of those situations and we can salt games away earlier. With Mond, the interesting thing is, I think we got to be frank and with fans, and I think most Vikings fans know this, but really, Dave, and I know, and most everybody out there knows, that the percentage of these guys that are drafted as quarterbacks that are going to be the guy is like minimal. Like even the top 5 that got picked in the first round, I'd be surprised if more than one of them ends up being like even very good. There's going to be there's going to be some busts in there. Lawrence looks like the slam dunk, but is he going to be a franchise guy that wins Super Bowls for you? He's certainly not I don't think he's considered the next best prospect since Andrew Luck. Luck didn't win any Super Bowls either. Right?
Yeah, because you wonder if the injury bug suddenly starts to hit. And statistically, I think it is top of the first round is like 50%, or first round itself is 50% hit. The others are busts, right? So if you take 2.5 of that 5 and throw them out the garbage, it's bad. Second round is like 20%. Third round is like 13% hit. And that's it. And you
Yeah.
should expect that if you get 1 out of the 10, you're lucky.
Which means that Mond is more than likely not going to mount to a pile of horse dung, and
Hopefully, at least a good backup.
yeah. Hopefully, I think that when I look at Mond, I feel that I feel I'm making some like Dak Prescott kind of comes to mind to me, right? Like
Right. And
not
that
that
was
they're
one
the
of the guys
same.
he was comp to, believe it or not.
Yeah, like not that they're the same kind of players, but their college resume was pretty similar, right? Like both guys had a high number of they'd started a long time in college football, pretty much close to 4 years starters where they were. So a lot of tape on them. Great leaders, hard workers. They were both good runners. And had strong arms. And actually, Mond's arm was considered stronger than Dak Prescott's, and I don't think Prescott's got too shabby an arm either. Uh, but but they had accuracy and consistency issues coming in. They both of those guys really their junior and senior years were the years that they really stepped up their play and they improved. Prescott had better accuracy numbers than Mond, but both of them had accuracy issues. I think both of them are coming into a situation where they got an established starter ahead of them who has a reputation for not winning big games or in playoff games, and so that's good for them. I think so. The situations are similar. Like Dan was saying, he hopes Mond doesn't see the field this year, and I don't either. In Prescott's case, he got put in there by default, but ended up playing so well that Romo never got. Yeah, Romo ended up getting Wally pipped, and that's. I don't see that happening with Mond, but the big concerns are, of course, like you say, the mechanical issues and the fact that, or the footwork issues, and the fact that Mond was considered very mechanical in the pocket, needs to get better reading plays, and I don't know. Those things I think are for a guy who is such a film junkie and so coachable and such a great leader, you kind of wonder why that stuff didn't get ironed out at the college level, and can it get ironed out at the pro level?
Right. And well, I think stuff like that can. At the college level, it's slightly different game, less talent, so you can make up for stuff. He's got to nail it this time, and it may be the difference in coaches. Let's hope Spawn of Kubiak will, bring him up to play at least at Kirk Cousins level, and then add in the things that Mond has on top of that, the mobility, the leadership, things like that. On top of that, if he does, we've got a successful quarterback waiting in the wings, and that's what I'm hoping the Vikings have. Also, nobody wants to see him play this year. I want to see him play Week 18 because we have already secured our playoff spot. But that's me. I'm a little Homer-ism on that one. So,
yeah,
a little biased.
The context is, of course, important too with Mond. Look at Mac Jones. Got picked in the middle of the first round, but look who he's playing with. There were 6 guys on the offensive. The 6 guys got drafted that he played with on offense, and 4 of them were in the first round. Like Mac Jones is thrown to wide open receivers, got tons of time to throw the ball every game, even against the best teams. Kellen Mond, what offensive players were drafted besides him? 1 guy, and it was like Dan Moore II, who's an offensive guard. That has to play into things too. Like, not that Texas A&M is like chicken liver, but he didn't have the same supporting cast as Mac Jones had, or Trevor Lawrence had, or Justin Fields had. The other thing that it'll always be interesting, of course, Dave, is like the whole thing about the Vikings had an opportunity to trade up and get Justin Fields. This is the most important position in football. They decided, the Bears ended up making the trade. They traded their 20th pick and the 5th this year, and they traded next year and the 4th next year to get Justin Fields. The Vikings must have been able to, the Vikings could have traded their 14th to the Giants, And they had like multiple third and fourth rounders they could have traded this year, and they could have traded next year's first and whatever else. Like I'm sure they obviously decided that it wasn't
Well,
that
my
that
sources said the team was asking for 2022 first rounders, and Spielman and the crew said, no, we're not giving you a future first round pick. And that's what killed it. They were willing to give the 14th and whatever else, but they weren't willing to give next year's first rounder. And that's what killed the deal with the Vikings.
Well, and if Fields ends up being like the Bears franchise quarterback for the next 15 years, the Vikings are going to be ruining that decision. Well,
we'll grouse about it. Or if Mac Jones develops, because Mac Jones was available at our spot as well.
Yeah.
I don't think the Vikings liked Mac Jones.
No.
From what I understand, they didn't. They preferred Mond over Jones. But
yeah,
because they view Jones as just a basic version of Kirk Cousins. It's whereas Mond gives the intangibles of being able to move and being better in leadership and such. Whereas they feel Mac Jones needs everything perfect, just like Kirk Cousins does.
But yeah, that's the trade that's going to be the Vikings are going to be who made the right choice there.
And who's going to live with it for the next 10 years. Yep.
If you're again, if quarterback's the most important position in football, you would think that if you really wanted to get Justin Fields, you're willing to sweeten, beat the Bears offer, especially when they're playing in your division. We did not do that. We decided, like Matt Collar said, we kind of took a half measure and said we'll roll with Cousins and we'll bring in Mond, who we like, but we're going to get him later than Fields. And not have to trade any picks away or draft capital away to do that, and we'll try to develop them. That's what they've done, and we'll see how it works out. Of course, as you say, the percentages of a third-rounder quarterback working out are not very good. But that doesn't mean,
they're there.
as I said before, they're there, and I love the pick when they made it where they made it. Would I have loved them trading back for Fields? I'm one of those guys who likes to, I hate trading draft capital for guys, but, when you get a Jared Allen and trade some draft picks, and hey,
then it's worth it.
Then it's worth it. Maybe Justin Fields is going to be like the Jared Allen equivalent at quarterback. If that's the case, the Vikings are going to be
regretful.
Very regretful.
But with Fields going to Chicago, we have the hope that Nagy ruins another quarterback.
And or it's just the Chicago thing. But I think you gotta.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who head coach is.
look at how the Bears approached it, though, and I don't usually I'm not a big Ryan Pace supporter, and I don't think everybody in Chicago is. But they traded Trubisky. What was he, like the first, or he was like the fourth overall pick or something? They traded up to get him. 4 years. They came to the determination he's not the right guy. Let him go. Now they trade up to get Fields. They weren't satisfied with bringing Trubisky back or even bringing Foles, going with Nick Foles. They felt they were going to swing for the fences and try to get the guy who's going to be the guy for the next decade and a half. And we see with the way quarterbacks are these days that some of them can, if they, they can stick around for 20 years, even if they take care of their bodies well and they get protected well. So very interesting how the Bears have approached the quarterback situation the past 4 or 5 years, and how the Vikings have approached it. We seem to be fine with Cousins and what he does, and the Bears were not fine with Trubisky and what he does, even though Trubisky has taken his team to the playoffs twice in his 4 years, and Kirk has taken the Vikings to the playoffs once in his 3.
Speaking of protection, all right, everybody talks about protection is needed for Kirk Cousins. Protection will obviously be good for any quarterback, Kellen Mond. What happened, and we dropping down from 14 to 24 or whatever it was, and Anthony has talked about this, is we picked up with that trade, 2 linemen that look to start. First is Christian Darrisaw, which I know we want to talk about, and the second is Wyatt Davis. Both most likely will be looking to be started this year. So, Christian Darrisaw, what do you think of him being drafted?
Oh, I love the pick because, especially where we got him, but huge human being. He is mobile. Like I'm not a college, I'm just going by the scouting reports and the highlights that I see. But hey, man, this guy is huge, but can move like you wouldn't believe for a guy his size, and didn't give up a sack last year, I don't think at all.
None, zero.
And he can move. The highlights show a guy that he doesn't just block at the line of scrimmage on running plays. He's into the linebackers, even cornerbacks, and just throwing them like they're like paperweights off to the side. So I don't know if this guy doesn't work out, it'll be a huge surprise. I think his ceiling would be just a solid starter for 10 years at left tackle, but he could potentially be a guy who's a dominant all pro type guy. So loved him. And beyond the Darrisaw, there's a couple other draft picks that I'm really interested to see what happens. And one of them is Wyatt Davis, because he was a guy that was potentially like a late first rounder, if you read it, or at least definitely second rounder. And we got him, not so early in the third. Two-time All-American, I believe, at Ohio State. Right. Had some injury issues with the knee stuff last year, but he's a guy that if he gets his mitts on you, you're not getting away from him, and he's playing inside, so he's going to be able to get his mitts on guys, I think. I just think about how young Davis is not a starter yet, but if what we think happens is that they move Cleveland over to left guard and keep Davis at right guard, then Cleveland's going to knock Dakota Dozier out as a starter, which is awesome. And I'm fine with Dozier being a backup. That's what he should be. Good depth, but you'd have Davis starting. So we could have an offensive line that's got two rookies, Darrisaw, Davis, a second-year guy in Cleveland, and then you got a third-year guy in Bradbury, and then the old guy is O'Neal. Just going into his fourth year. That is worrisome, I guess, in some ways, because could be such a young offensive line, and we hear about offensive linemen need time to develop. But I don't see how Davis and Cleveland at guard won't be an upgrade over what was there last year in the past 2 years.
They're an upgrade, and I see the line has gotten much better. And like you said, it's young. And if these guys...
Young and cheap.
And if these guys gel, and it takes, especially in today's NFL where you don't have, like way back when you had 6 preseason games, or even last year when you had year before when you had 4 preseason games, these guys, once they get into the groove, if they gel, if they work out, if Bradbury takes that necessary step and doesn't get forklifted back into Cousins' lap every time, right? Because he has 2 better guards beside him, and all those guys gel. What has been a deficit in the virtually all of Zimmer's term, except for maybe 2014, now could be a strength. And with that strength, the offense goes from top 10-ish. Can they take that next step? Because Cousins will have time, better pass blocking. Dalvin Cook will have even better run blocking. Hey, put Darrisaw in front of me. I can run all day behind that, right? Because he's a big man. And same with Wyatt Davis. Wyatt Davis, if you look at the rookie picture, the rookie class, Vikings.com put up yesterday, Wyatt Davis is not small. He's a big guy. We know Ezra's big and we know O'Neal's big. The only small one on the group is Bradbury. Yeah. So, and we know how well he can downfield block. Bradbury's awesome at run blocking. It's his pass blocking that is the issue. So, Dalvin Cook, if he stays healthy or with, rotation or whatever, because Dalvin Cook had a heavy workload last year,
he did.
He can have a great season. And but hopefully we're passing more and not always running, especially in predictable times. But I think the offensive line will do good for both that run and pass, which of course helps the offensive production, take some weight off the defense. The defense is improved. The Vikings improve. So I'm looking forward to Darrisaw. The only thing I have seen and read about Darrisaw that bothers me a little bit, and I'm sure it's going to be coached out of him, is that he tends to, once he wins his battle, he tends to quit. Right? And a lot of times, the defender, the play gets off script, and the running back or receiver or whatever has to double back, and that defender he had now makes the play because he quit and he's not watching. Right? He needs to go to the whistle, and I think that will be emphasized to him no matter what. You go to the whistle and you bury guys. And he has the ability to bury guys. And once he does that, that's infectious across the entire line and things get going. That's what I'm foreseeing in this upcoming season.
That was the Darrisaw. I think the main knock on him was finishing, that he didn't always finish. That also I remember was one of Matt Khalil's problems. Yes. He'd be like great at the initial point. He'd stop the guy, but then he would stop playing. Oh, my job is done, and then the guy would hustle and then get a sack or make a tackle, and then Khalil standing around with his pants down around his ankles, But if he just kept on playing to the whistle, there wouldn't have been any sack or tackle for a loss. But he would almost always do that, and then as injuries piled up on him, that wasn't just the only issue with him. Everything was an issue, and then that's why he's no longer a Viking or not even playing in the league anymore. I don't think it. But offensive line, it's the talent. I don't have any questions about the talent that's there right now. The only question is the inexperience and how long, especially if you got two rookies starting on the line, if that's how it ends up being. How are they going to adjust to the NFL playing against the big boys and right away? Because the Vikings' early season schedule is not terribly difficult, I would say. Right. It's going to be important for them, if they're going to make the playoffs, to do like a 4-2, 5-1 out of that. And if the offensive line and you got a young offensive line and the rookies aren't getting it done quite yet, that's going to impact Cousins' play. It's going to impact Cook's play. It's going to impact Madison's play when he's in there. And we don't know yet how much improved the defense is going to be, whether they're going to be able to make up for any of that. But really, when you're young and you've got guys that aren't used to playing in the league and it's on the offensive line, that could spell some issues early on in the year. I don't have concerns long term, but certainly in
short term. That's why I like looking at the schedule. The schedule before the bye in week 7 is a little, I don't want to say it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about schedules, right?
What looks like easy games now. Schedules and who we're playing now, it's the time. It affords that offensive line time to gel. I mean, they can play well and still make mistakes, and I think they can overcome them. It's after the bye we go into a stretch where it's going to be brutal, and they need to be on. And hopefully they've figured it out by then. But I like the way this schedule is set up that way. Specifically, I think it provides them that little cushion of time at the beginning. And if all goes well, that they finish, going into the bye 4-2, 5-1. And that's what I hope. So
yeah,
and that's what I see. So we'll see.
Yeah, it is a big we'll see type thing, especially because there'll be 3 preseason games this year, or
three,
just
3.
And of course the first one is a throwaway because it's all going to be after the first 2 series. There's most of the guys playing are going to be. Or maybe they won't approach it that way because they have one less. I don't know.
The first one against Denver in Minneapolis. Minneapolis might see the return of Teddy Bridgewater, or who knows, they might see Aaron Rodgers. Then the second one is Indy in Minneapolis at US Bank. And then we go on the road for the third one, which is usually the big game. However, we don't know if it's going to be treated as the big game or as the fourth game to Kansas City. And I do expect that will be the final tune-up game, but we'll see. We don't know how, like I said, this is a 3-game preseason. We don't know how they're going to run it because it's new.
Very new for all of us, for sure. Davis, pretty excited about him. Also excited about Chaz Surratt. Really interested to see what Zimmer and the Vikings do with him. Weird kind of guy, right? Because I don't know if you feel that way, but we all know he was a quarterback and then he switched to linebacker. But just looking at him on tape, he looks like a safety to me. Like he does not.
I do too. The tweener type deal, like Hurst was. He's big enough to be a linebacker, but he more of a safety type.
But he's listed 6'2", 220 something. But if you look at him on, he looks like a safety or even like a thick corner in a lot of ways. Not like, but not linebackers.
Like I've gotten smaller.
That's right. They're changing too. But hey, can't argue with the production at North Carolina. Like 6.5 sacks. What? Great closing speed, even though he's not big. I didn't see any issues on, of course, again, in their highlights, they don't show the bad plays as much, but you didn't see any issues with him having to take down, he's taking down guys as on contact. It's not like they're dragging him for 3 or 4 yards after he gets them. I'm really interested to see what Zimmer is going to do with this dude and how he's going to, what's he going to, is he going to be like a blitz guy? It looks like he can cover. He can blitz. He seems to be able to do it all. Are they going to
groom him like Anthony Barr? Is he going to be an Anthony Barr sort of clone to replace Anthony Barr next year?
In which case, he won't be blitzing.
No, Barr blitz. Blitzes, but Barr blitzes when it's against running backs and not against tackles. Tackles own Barr. But Barr owns running backs and receivers and people that leave him wide open. It's
as well he should.
He's
6'5" and 240, 250.
Yeah, and that's where I more see Surratt going. But we'll see. I mean, it's a chance. You guarantee the Vikings select a 4th-round linebacker in almost every draft. But in the meantime, it's special teams. As I keep telling people get into the day 3 drafts. Right? Well, what do you do with this guy? Does this guy have a future? What do you do with this? You got to think of, especially in that first year, day 3 is special teams. Period. These guys are being drafted to help on special teams. Special teams last year, we sucked. We were 31st out of 32 teams. We sucked on punt returns, kick returns, punt coverage, kick coverage. We sucked across the board.
Punting, place kicking. I mean, everywhere.
We sucked. And I think if you view most of those day 3 guys, look at those day 3 guys and go, how will they help special teams? And hopefully they'll develop into their main positions after that. But how will they help special teams? You look at a guy like Surratt, and this dude looks like he's going to be a hell of a gunner, and he's going to work great. You look at Wang Chung, Nene Ngwangwe, or whatever his name is. I'm not looking at it right now.
Wang Chung.
The athletic ability is off the charts. Hopefully he can return. He told himself he wanted to be the best kick returner in college, and he wants to be the best kick returner in the NFL. Hey, by all means, do it. Yeah. Hopefully you can also return punts, because kicks are becoming less relevant with most of the kicks going through the end zone. But if you can return punts at that level, oh yeah, baby, right?
Yep.
And you look at these players, and if they can do that and they can contribute there and increase our special teams so we have better field position, right? Which helps the offense, which helps the defense, right? It all works together to help get better. And that's where I view these day 3 guys as. After this season, we could say, hey, Wang Chung, he's a good number 3 back. We can finally say goodbye to Amir Abdullah, and he steps into that role like Mike Boone sort of type deal, right? Surratt can step up as, hey, I'm now the number 3 linebacker or move in a bar spot, in 2022 or whatever it is. But for this season, 2021, look at your day 3 guys as special teamers and where they contribute there, and then base your evaluations off of that. And if they're good at special teams, we've got our value.
Mm. Yep. So. Anthony was asking about if we see Gladney, which segues nicely into the third into like the final topic, which is the whole Hughes trade. And I guess if I wasn't really too optimistic, and not that I don't even really care all that much because of what Gladney has done, whether he's back or not. But if he is going to be back, he's definitely going to be. If he plays, he's in line for like a 6. Yeah, like he's in line for what is it, 4 to 6 games? He's going to be out for off-field conduct.
Well, no, I think if it's NFL punishes it, I think it's 4 to 6 games, something like that. But we'll see. And I know they asked Zimmer in his press conference here yesterday, day before, about him, last question about Gladney, and he says, we're going to let the process work. And
well, that's what they have to say.
That's what they got to say. They asked him, does he know anything questions about it? And he obviously did, but he's got to say, we got to let the process work. So,
yeah, you're only going to get yourself into trouble if you start making statements about legal situations. So just shut up, and people, they're going to ask the question, and you're going to say no comment, and that's all right. But I think that the whole trading Hughes makes it me. And I'm not the first person to think this. It was mentioned earlier that they must feel that Gladney will be on the field at some point this year, or else you wouldn't get rid of him.
Right.
And there's still veteran quarterbacks out there like Jason Verrett, like Nicole Roby-Coleman, who are still free agents as far as I'm aware, who are guys that you think would have some value to the Vikings. And there's a few others as well. They're all getting up there in age, they're in the 29, 30 age range. And some of the guys that are free agents are much older than that. Like Darquez Denard, who we always thought Zimmer was going to sign, but he never ends up here. But I think that if Gladney was a goner from the organization or for the year, that they probably wouldn't have got rid of Hughes. Having said that, Hughes being gone really, and with Gladney's situation being up in the air, it really makes it quite clear that it's going to be Peterson, Dantzler, and Mac Alexander are the top 3. And that's probably the way it was going to roll anyway.
Right.
But that's baked in the cake.
But with Gladney and Hughes, you had at least backup that could play inside or outside.
There you go. Exactly. You don't have Hughes anymore, and you might not have Gladney for half the year. So what do you got left? You got Chris Boyd and Harrison Hand.
Mm-hmm. And there's another guy there. I would have to look up his name, but
they did.
Top.
Well, and they signed a couple of corners as undrafted free agents. Henderson Kid, and somebody else. Both of the I was just reading up on it, unless I missed something, but this is what I saw. They're like 2 rangy, like 6'1", that like long arms and stuff, but not the fastest dudes. There's probably nothing's going to come of those guys, but right now, outside of the top 3, the Vikings depth, which would have looked pretty decent if you had Gladney and Hughes in the mix. And now you don't have Hughes and you might not have Gladney. Now it's a lot different when Chris Boyd is could be the next guy stepping up if somebody gets hurt. And there's always corners are always getting dinged up. So not the greatest depth situation, and that's unfortunately a bit of a common theme throughout most of this Vikings roster is that the depth is not all that great unless some of the draft picks from last year and this year start
to step up.
So far, we have no evidence of that happening, but that's where, Anthony, I could definitely see Gladney's going to see the field this year. It's just a matter of when the NFL discipline and the legal process allows him to do that. There was never any, even though I was fine with the Vikings getting rid of him, the fact that he was the 31th overall pick last year, that means he was just the Vikings were not going to toss him unless he did something like even worse than what he's already done.
Well, he may go to jail, and if that's the case, we obviously don't have him.
Yeah, but, that's right, yeah.
But speaking of 30th, 31st pick, Mike Hughes, who was drafted late in the first round a few years ago, and then has started, I think, 7 games, something like that, his whole 3 years. He's played in more, but he's only because Mike Zimmer doesn't like to start rookie corners. But then he got injured with the ACL, and then the neck injury, and as we learned this week, he was traded to Kansas City. And the only thing the Vikings got was an upgraded 7th next year to a 6th. And if you figure Kansas City's going to be in contention for the AFC, right, that's going to be a very low 6th, right, bottom of the round 6th. That's not much of an upgrade just to get rid of him. Yes, he had a $1.8 million salary, but when you put somebody else in and when the whole formula, he saves about 1.2. Now, could that 1.2 be used in an extension for O'Neal or Hunter? Sure. But the question is, why would you give up that depth? There's got to be, to me, I asked this week, there's got to be a story behind that rather than his injury issues. What do you think?
We didn't really know what plans they had for Hughes, right? Even they were bringing him. Well, they're not bringing him back, but he was still on the roster.
They denied the 5th-year extension.
Yeah, but that was a guarantee, right? Based on his injury history and his performance. But I didn't really look at it as what's the story behind it. I looked at it more as they didn't see a role for him. He was going to be the 5th cornerback. Either no matter how it all shook out, and they were like, well, let's try to get some value for him if we can. And obviously when you've got a guy with Hughes' track record, when he's played, he hasn't played really well and he hasn't really played a whole lot. You're not going to get very much for that person, even if they were a former first rounder. So I think they just decided to cut their losses. I don't know if it's it was funny that they, and I don't know, there was a few people who seemed to be a bit upset with the trade, but on the other hand, when Hughes played, everybody was like, "Guy sucks. Why is he in there?" So he sucks.
He had flashes of being really talented, and then there was other times
he was on the team.
Yeah,
I don't know. His only flash was. It's unfortunate. A bad miss by the Vikings. I'm sure we could look at the second round of the 2018 draft and go, well, geez, they could have had this guy, and they could have had this guy, and they could have had this guy, and they could have had this guy. And
you can't do that.
It always is. It always is, but it's always sometimes fun to do those things. But it'll just be, I don't know, was there some sort of other backstory, the reason why they got rid of Hughes? It's a theory to throw around there, especially when you kind of look at now that he's gone and you don't know what Gladney's status is, who are the people that are behind him, and it's not a whole hell of a lot. Nobody with any established track record anyway. Mm-hmm. And if somebody like Peterson or Dantzler and gets hurt, and Dantzler missed 5 games last year, then you're sticking in somebody to play as a third corner who you probably would rather not play.
Yeah, Harrison Hand.
Like a Chris Jones, who
Or
somehow
Boyd.
was
Or
re-signed.
Jones. Yes.
Somehow got signed. Apparently Chris Jones is with the Tennessee Titans. He got signed by the Titans. I thought the Titans were smarter than that.
Hey, every team makes its mistakes, some more than others, and it is what it is.
I guess just because they signed Jones doesn't mean he's going to stick with the team.
True. He's got to make the team, and he's got to make it probably on special teams. So we'll see. It happens. Hey, it doesn't mean Hughes makes Kansas City.
No, it doesn't. Although they don't have they don't have a whole lot of cornerback depth over there either.
So he probably will, and he's relatively cheap. So that
if he's healthy.
And if he passes the physical. I don't know if he's passed the physical yet. So, and the Vikings may have said, hey, we're not going to risk it. We're sending him. And Kansas City said, hey, doctors, we check him out. He looks good. And it could be as simple as that.
So. Yep. But it does make for some interesting times in the cornerback unit for the Vikings. You would like to be confident about the backups you have. I don't think that we can say that we are confident about that.
No, we got to root for the starters to stay healthy all season long. And it's going to seem long because of the 18 weeks, 17 games. Now, the game amount when you consider preseason is the same. It's still 20 games. But when they count, they're playing in that one more that counts. And you hope they stay healthy all that time and then hopefully deep into the playoffs.
That's the hope, Dave.
Yep. Rest at the end of February.
That's right. Mm-hmm. But, hey, you think you don't have anything to talk about, and here we are an hour into the show, and we're still gabbing.
Yep. Well, but with that, any last words?
No, the only last words will be, I don't know. This is like a May and June are going to be interesting times, right? What's going to happen? Like there probably won't be a whole lot of roster additions or deletions at this point.
You never know. There's a little room they could, but who is the question?
We're not going to really know until training camp, like how the rookies look in a little bit more serious. I shouldn't say serious, but more of the kind of more situations where you can actually evaluate what these dudes actually can do and cannot do. So we'll have to be very creative, I think, Dave, in coming up with our topics.
I think we'll have no problem. We got more OTAs coming up. The veterans are going to show up, most of them. The union says no, don't, but I think most of them will, especially with the injury deal that the tackle on Denver busted his Achilles, and they say, no, we're not paid for it. It wasn't a sponsored workout. So I think we're going to see more of those. Plus, it's the more the rookies show up, and all of them showed up, the more they get in front of the coaches and the more likelihood they have of taking that veteran's job. So the veteran's going to show up. I expect most everybody to show up for OTAs. They're going to cook along as the summer goes along. And then we'll get a brief period during the middle of July when everything stops. But then we get into training camp. So it'll be good. We'll have stuff. Trust me, we'll have stuff to talk about.
Somebody on the Vikings will do something stupid, and we'll get to talk about that too.
Oh, yes.
I don't know what that stupid thing is going to be, but I'm sure
driving 120 miles an hour down interstate, whatever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could happen. With that,
that's my final words.
With that, everybody, continue to have a great weekend. Stay positive. We think the Vikings are going to have a great year, Ozzy.
So does Arthur.
Yep. And Skull!
Skull, baby!
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.